Welcome back, guys. If you are just joining us, this is INX Prime Live. Remember, we are on your screens every single Monday to Friday between the hours of 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. Now, we know that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was given no less than 50 standing ovations when he did actually go and address the U.S. Congress this week. Now, just looking at that in particular, we do know that both the Democrats and the Republicans actually gave him a standing ovation, and it's something that we have to definitely chat more about. And to do that right now, we are going to be chatting to international relations expert Donovan Williams, who actually does join me now to unpack that a little bit further. Donovan, thank you so much for joining us tonight here on INX Prime Live.
Good evening. Thank you so much for inviting me. Just worried sometimes you break up a bit in terms of the connection, but let's battle through. I'm sure we'll be able to get through easily.
No, I hope the connection is pretty good. I just want us to chat about this in particular. It's such an important conversation to have. Now, we all know that Israel is the United States ally and partner in the Middle East. It is obviously a region that Israel has brought chaos to. Just last week alone, Israel actually bombed 3 different countries, but that being Yemen, Lebanon, and Palestine. Is it naive to expect that the Americans are there to leverage its relationship with Israel to rein in their excesses?
Look, I don't think there's a distinction between Israel and the United States anymore, regardless of whoever is elected in November. It is clear that the United States is ensuring that its hegemony within the Middle East, North African region remains, MENA, but in particular the Middle East. And it sees Israel as central to that. But there isn't a sense of 2 different countries. Even in apartheid South Africa, as much as the United States and the UK governments backed South Africa and supported it and did put levels of pressure on it, there was a sense of South Africa was not a country that was a part of the United States. And in this case, in terms of Israel, they are joined at the hip. It's pretty clear. There's no ways the United States is going to use its influence to ask Israel not to press forward Israel's interests, because Israel's interests are the United States' interests. This address, more than anything, showed it up. And just note, though, the majority of the Democrat senators and so forth weren't at the address. There were some of them there. One in particular, one of Palestinian origin, was part of the squad. She actually protested. She held up protests. That the other Democrats didn't attend. However, they didn't join the protests either. So they just sat at home. They didn't participate. And both the deputy president, designate candidate for Trump, Vance, as well as Kamala Harris, who's the current vice president of the country and is the Democrat nominee for president. They both didn't attend, but they cited diary commitments, coincidentally. Yeah.
Yeah, it's important to note that as well, and I think it's important that we do analyze who was actually in the room and who decided to actually stay absent when it came to this address. But I just want to touch back on, America's position in the world. Now, we know that the Americans are not signatories to the ICC, but from what we saw in Congress, can anybody expect them to carry out a warrant of arrest on Netanyahu if those arrest warrants had actually been issued by now?
Look, the ICC, the US has passed legislation in terms of the ICC, which is the International Criminal Court, which is through the Rome Statute. Okay, so it's different to the ICJ, which is an International Court of Justice, which is the UN's court, which South Africa has taken the case, the very famous genocide case, to there. So let's just separate that. On the ICC, on the International Criminal Court that came through the Rome Statute, the USA is not just not a signatory, but the way the ICC operates is that a permanent member, veto-wielding member like the US, a permanent member of the Security Council, can actually get the ICC to do what it wants it to do. However, at the same time, and not being a signatory, it does not need to take on an arrest warrant if there was one for Netanyahu. But more than that, the US has passed legislation warning the ICC that if it charges any American politician, they will regard that as an act of war and they will bomb the ICC.
Wow, that's crazy.
So,
I mean,
so you really
that's
understand
insane.
the belligerence of this. So the ICC is quite useless with regard to the United States of America. In terms of the ICJ cannot enforce its findings, its rulings. It requires the United Nations, in particular the Security Council, where the US sits as a permanent veto-wielding member.
Yeah, that's very, very true. You know, whenever we see any politician speaking, whenever there's any massive debates in any country, more specifically in the US, and one that just happened very recently with Trump and Biden as well, you know, people spend a lot of time, many days after that, fact-checking what was actually said in that debate. Now, if we fact-check what Netanyahu said in between those 50 or so standing ovations, one of them was that the Israeli army had killed very few civilians in Gaza, and the death toll is close to about 40,000 now. Can you think of anything else that Netanyahu actually lied about?
Oh, he lied about a lot. He wove a tale that was full of lies. But it's part of the propaganda that is being propagated in the US by United States persons as well. The first lie, which is the most important lie, and for us here in South Africa, and I know your viewers and you are quite popular with the younger viewers, so they didn't grow up in apartheid. One of the ways that apartheid managed to last so long, apartheid South Africa, managed to last so long was because the United States and the United Kingdom, in other words Great Britain, their government supported South Africa on the basis that there was what was called a rooi gevaar, a red danger, that the countries around South Africa were all communist. And South Africa was the only bulwark against communism and against Moscow. And the people who were resisting apartheid, the apartheid government, the African National Congress and so forth, were communists. And they were acting on behalf of the Soviet Union. So they created a rooi gevaar, a red danger. Similarly today, and this is what Netanyahu was saying, his speech is littered with this. It brought together that Iran, so there's like a green danger, trucking on exploiting Islamophobia, but basically saying Iran is the main problem, that the Hamas is an agent of Iran, Hezbollah are agents of Iran, the Houthi in Yemen are agents of Iran. So essentially saying that they are fighting Iran when they are killing all these thousands of Palestinians in Gaza, and so forth. So there's this real story being spun, so much so that not just that Netanyahu said it, the president's spokesperson, also said that the protesters outside the Congress, that some of them, not all of them, but some of them, and you see now how they're trying to paint them, some of them have been funded by Iran. They cannot show evidence of a single group or individual funded by Iran to protest, but they have said this without any evidence, so that you think all resistance to Israel and in support of Palestinians is a part of Iran. And the reason for Iran is that Iran, it's very different from a few years back. Iran was quite isolated a few years back. It was by itself. Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Egypt do not have time for Iran. However, since Iran has joined BRICS, you have a situation that Russia and China, and given the conflict in Ukraine, are quite supportive of Iran. Iran is not alone. So if you recall a couple of months ago when Israel attacked the embassy in Damascus, the Iranian embassy in Damascus, Iran responded with drones and missiles. And who came to its aid? Not just Jordan, not just the United States, not just UK, not just France, but also Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia also came to its aid. And Saudi Arabia came to its aid. So now we have noticed Saudi Arabia saying that they are not necessarily a member of BRICS. They just attended the BRICS meetings. And 2 weeks ago, they bought billions of US bonds to show that they're not actually de-dollarizing. These are all matters. And the reasons for this is that They are pushing that it is Iran, that these are agents of Iran, like they pushed earlier that Russian trolls are invading the American space and thwarting elections. And now they're going to move on to China. And here in South Africa, for you, mind you, the same thing has happened where you've had like progressive publications like The New Frame, which were told they were Chinese propagandists with no evidence, nothing whatsoever. That even the New York Times said that South Africa has got publications where you have Chinese propaganda being pushed forward, etc. They're going to do the same with Iran, but they're going to link that Iranian matter to the Chinese. Blinken, the American secretary, has said. So that is the biggest lie. And so when I say that they joined at the hip, that Netanyahu was helping the US in the global disinformation agenda to ensure that American hegemony and American centrality and power remains, not just in the Middle East, but here as well. As we know, South Africa is under review right now. The Congress has passed that. The Senate may adopt it, may pass it as well. And then the president may adopt it, which means that South Africa will be treated like a negative state. I want to say an enemy of the US state. And all of this is going to be tied to Iran, going to be tied to China and Russia and BRICS and the Ukraine. And we're going to look like we are anti-democratic when we are not. When the United States has been anti-democratic, together in helping Israel. And that was prompted by the case we took to the ICJ in that way. So you ask about the big lie. This is the big lie. This is the fake news and propaganda that Netanyahu brought forward. And we've already suffered in this country in terms of our own understanding of what is the truth and so forth. Like a publication can just go down like that, with South Africans being used as tools of the United States.
No, it's really horrible without a doubt. I know you just mentioned something earlier about, the last time we actually spoke to you was when Iran actually carried out that historic drone attack on Israel. Now, Netanyahu is actually calling for a global coalition to take on Iran, like you did mention. Is this yet another ploy to pull the US into another war in the Middle East? What's your opinion on that?
This is not to pull the US into another war. That Netanyahu knows the game quite well. If Israel looks like they're winning, then they're not going to get all the military aid they need to get. They're not going to get all the funding they need to get. The Israeli economy is in trouble right now. Their technology is no more as great as it used to be, and it can't be exported because of China. See, there's the link to China again. So what Netanyahu needs to do, he needs to create that it's not just about. So when you see the pictures of the children starving in Gaza, when you see those buckets, holding out for food, etc., and which is now another lie that is the reason Hamas is stealing the food, whereas everybody knows that it's the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force checkpoints that are making certain that the food doesn't get in. But when you see that, you are then switched to say, no, but it's Iran. It's Iran. And that makes certain that the US hawks and so forth, the warmongers in the United States, together with Israel, get their way. So no matter who is elected in November, they will support continuing Israel, keeping Iran and China and Russia out of the Middle East. That's what's going to be put forward at some stage.
Yeah, and I mean, just touching on that as well, like you did mention, now we are coming close to the November election, and the United States could have its very first woman president if Kamala Harris actually beats Trump. From the two candidates, though, I know you mentioned that both of them are going to obviously continue on with the agenda, but which one is likely to be more pro-Israel than the other?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that. You would have to repeat it.
Sure. I was just saying that we know that the election is coming up, the US election, and we might end up seeing, Kamala Harris becoming the first female president if she ends up beating Trump in particular. And I know you did mention that both of them actually, are going to continue on with this agenda. But out of the two candidates, which one is likely to be more pro-Israel than the other, between the Democrats and the Republicans?
It's like judging the color red, which is more redder than the other. The other could be pink, but red is red. It's very difficult to ascertain that. We were calling Joe Biden Genocide Joe. Kamala Harris was his vice president. Trump has basically said Biden is a Palestinian, although Biden himself calls himself a Zionist. So you can't bank on either of them. It's not about the lesser evil stuff that that is put forward. That's propagandist in many ways. Unfortunately, we don't have any good outcome for Palestinians from that election. We've got to put pressure through the multilateral institutions, and in this country, we've got to support our government on this matter very, very strongly. We are too quiet. The United States gets us scared. You have everybody worried about AGOA and trade and whatever. We need to stand by because our government has been brave and has brought this forward. I don't think we stand by enough on our government on this matter and other matters, international matters. And we need to do that, not just phoning praise on the lawyers and, and so forth, which we do at different times. It has to be a lot more cerebral and a lot more direct because expect that whoever comes in is going to exploit this, or even before that, to put South Africa in its place in real terms. Understand that. And that will follow on from countries in Europe, which have now become close to vassal states of the United States through NATO, who are just listening to them. And and that link with Ukraine as well. So for me, it's a good question. Which one would be better? I don't know, because I don't think either would.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the same both ways. But Donovan, thank you so much for joining us tonight on INX Prime Live.
Thank you so much as well. Sorry about the network. I don't know if it's mine or yours, but I hope our viewers got to be able to see it. But thanks so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening and your views as well.
Thank you so much. It was very insightful, guys. That is Donovan Williams, who is the international relations expert, just sharing with us the importance of supporting our own government and the foreign policy in that sense that we do follow in South Africa when it comes to protecting us as a country with all of these different countries that are out to put South Africa as a bad country out there. But on that note, we are going to take a quick ad break. We'll come right back.